We live, baby. Good evening to whoever's in there, maybe one person. So good evening to all the brown girls, brown boys out there, and everyone in between. Welcome to Brown Girls Book Club. We're your hosts, Sharanja and Anika, and today we are going to discuss this book, Pet. So, little synopsis on the book is that the main character's name is Jam, and the main character's name is Jam, and
Hi, Gregory.
They're living in like a futuristic world, which is not too far into the future, but they have this idea of their town of Lucille just got over what they call monsters, but we don't really know what monsters are yet. And then her mom is an artist, and late one night, I almost said pet. Late one night, Jam decides to go into her mom's studio, and then her hand gets cut, and then she ends up pulling out this creature of the paint from the painting. And you later on find out that the creature's name is Pet. And Pet is a hunter of these monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pet gets Jam to help her. Well, I guess it's not her. To help it.
Help it. There's no gender.
Yeah, to help it go hunt a specific monster. Mm-hmm. So,
good job, Anika.
What I'd like to say about this book is that it gives a lot of diversity in different ways. So the character Jam, we find out that she's transgendered, as well as she can speak, but she chooses to limit herself in her speaking. So most of her communication is through ASL.
And the fact that everyone around her chooses to learn ASL with her so they can also better communicate with her.
Yeah. And let's see. Her best friend's name is Redemption, and he's a boxer. And where was I going with this? I was going to say something.
Were you going to go into more about their friendship or speak more on the family dynamic itself?
Oh, yeah. So Redemption actually has two moms and a dad. So it's like his parents are in like a polyamorous situation.
Yeah. And the thing I liked most about this world thank you, Gregory. I really appreciate that. Thank you. The thing I liked the most about the world building in this book is the fact that all of these things that would be considered, I don't want to say scandalous, but like we would consider awkward in our culture today, like with Jam being transgendered, and the fact that like she has known she was transgendered from like a young age, and the fact that her parents were very accepting of it from the get-go. Like they helped her get surgery, they helped her get
with no questions asked. It wasn't like taboo or anything.
No, it was no questions asked. It was almost like, oh, so that was what was going on, and then they rushed to fix it, basically.
Yeah. So for those who don't know the book, what had happened was the reason why I guess she learned ASL Jam was because as a child, like she was like 3 years old and she wasn't using her words. She wasn't using her words yet. So her actual first words was when she was 3. A stranger came up and was like, "Oh, you have such a handsome son." And then her first word was girl, like, because she was just saying girl, like, I'm a girl. So then they realized it's like, oh, we understand now why you fight us when we try to dress you as a boy.
And then they just went on to like helping her with
they got her hormones and everything, got her surgery. Because I think at the I think she's supposed to be what, 15 or 16?
I think they're like mid-teens, both of them.
So like they really like were on the ball with that. They didn't wait too long. As well as, I don't know if you realize this, but in the book, I found that like even though they were older, like they were teenagers, in a lot of ways they were like kind of immature in not knowing things or like not being able.
I wouldn't say they were immature. I think they were purposely not taught certain things about the world. So maybe just.
Well, I mean more like okay, so like with Jam, she's a she's in her mid-teens and she's still getting tucked in at night. Like that.
I mean, every family is different, and it's an only she's their only kid too, so she's just
Okay,
probably
I'm an only kid.
beloved.
Your point.
Beloved. I mean, every parent is different towards their child, right? And I don't know, maybe it just says something about the culture that they're living in right now, that there is that level of care towards kids. I think that there's a scene in the library where they're going through pan- they're going
Carrie.
through pamphlets
Yes.
of like,
Because they're trying to find out what what monsters are and like
mhm.
how it could rear its head.
And those pamphlets were about like sexual abuse, parental neglect. And there was one sentence Jam says where it's like, I can't believe someone could be so negligent towards their child.
Yeah.
Well, me and you, we know that like this happens all the time, right? People go through a lot when it comes to like child abuse cases and whatnot. It's just a fact of our lives right now. But for Jam and Redemption, it's not. It's something unheard of where they're living.
So the book, the librarian, he was like such a gentle
Oop.
soul. He was like, huh?
Oop. His name was Oop.
Yeah. So he was like, he knew Jam since she was a child, like since basically she was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And he like, every time she went to the library, because she went a lot, he would like give her information, give her like books to read. He was just like a positive influence
Mm-hmm.
in her life. As
Mm-hmm.
well as he knew about the times before when there was like monsters all over, and I think he fought them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's from that time, basically.
Yeah.
And I like that for the most part, there were a lot of adults that pretty much gave them answers to the questions that they were asking. Like they were
Yeah, like they
speaking
weren't hush hush.
no, they weren't hush hush. They were pretty much like treating them like like adults when it came to their questions. Basically, they weren't hiding anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask, so when they mentioned monsters in the book, they weren't very descriptive as to what monsters could actually be. So we're kind of like just left up to interpretation as to what that could mean.
Well, up
So
until the,
up until the end, but
but
my
that's like when they're talking, because obviously they talked about the monsters, but what you and I didn't explain just now is that they also talked about angels. So
mhm,
when they were talking about angels, they meant like people who basically fought the monsters and stuff. But then
mhm,
when Jam went to investigate like what angels like look like, she realized that like these these angels kind of look like monsters.
mhm. There's a very clear theme of good versus evil throughout this whole book, but it it also mentions like sometimes you're not going to be able to tell off the bat who is a good person or who is a bad person. Like how is that something that you can like figure out quickly? It's not, right? You can't tell who's a good person or a bad person based off how they look, which is what we're kind
Exactly.
of, yeah, which is
Any
what
person
Jam
could
sort of
be an
thinks.
angel or a monster.
Yeah, anyone can be an angel or a monster, but it depends on their actions. It depends on their actions, like what they do that lead people to thinking if they're good or not.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So in their whole quest to look for monsters, Pet tells Jam that the monster that they're looking for is in Redemption's house.
Mhm.
So then that sets like alarm bells off because she's like, is my best friend in danger? Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
and she has a good relationship with everybody in his house, basically. So she wants to know, like, she's saying, like, it must be a mistake, it must be a lie.
Yeah, she didn't want to believe that there was anything wrong.
Yeah. Which is why when we go to that scene that you're talking about where they're looking through the pamphlets, she's like, she doesn't reveal the whole story to Redemption. She just wants to see how he reacts. So she's watching him, and then she sees a reaction when he gets to a certain pamphlet and realizes that
And it
that
was the
must mean
child
something.
abuse pamphlet,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. There was one thing that's mentioned a lot in the book is looking for the unseen, like looking past what you know about a situation and trying to find things that you hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is with Jam and the whole situation with what was going on in Redemption's house, there was something going on there, but because of her loving that family so much and growing up with them, she didn't want to see what was happening, because then it would be a complete dismantling of what she thought was a good family, a good home.
Same with Redemption. When he saw the signs of abuse within his home, he didn't want to believe that anything like that could happen. So
Mm-hmm.
he just like made excuses in his mind as to like what was happening.
Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to a lot of real life situations. Like, people don't want to admit what's going on in front of them because it could potentially change your whole life.
Yep.
Yeah. And I found it strange. Well, not strange. A bit hypocritical that in this new world where, you know, they praise themselves for believing victims, when Redemption goes to his parents with news, with the information about what's happening to his younger brother Moss.
Yep.
They don't believe him because the other person that's involved, that's committing this crime against Moss, is a very well-known, loved family member.
And wasn't he supposed to have been an angel himself?
He was also an angel himself. He was
So
also one of the community members who was very well respected, loved for what he did
yeah.
during the revolution.
So he was there. He's he has renowned. He's a renowned person for basically hunting and like beating up these monsters. When in reality, he's a monster himself.
Yeah,
And
and he was
then
doing a very good job of keeping it a secret. Especially his wife knew.
that's what I was gonna say. So this isn't the first time it happened. Like she knew it happened in the past, and she thought that like, oh, things had changed.
Yeah, and she kept it a secret, and she also allowed him to go near her
Nephew.
sister's kids.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another thing
So
where
then it's like, wouldn't she be a monster too?
yeah, they're both considered monsters. They're both considered monsters for what they for her for withholding information, and for him, like, doing what he did. And
Oh, and her name's Glass,
yeah,
his wife.
that's another thing I want to mention. All the characters in this book have really interesting names, like Redemption, Hibiscus, Jam, Aloe, Bitter. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't
Glass.
know the reason. Yeah, Glass. I don't know the reasoning for like the interesting name choices, but it did make people stand out a lot.
Cause like nobody has like a normal name.
Nobody has like a regular schmegular name. Yeah, but I wanted to go back to like relating it back to real life.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of cases where we talk about sexual abuse, especially with children, it's often more than not someone that they already know, and someone that's usually in their family.
Close to them. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people don't come forth with the truth about what's happening to them, because it's a family member, and they feel that no one will believe them, that they're going to believe this older adult in this family.
Yeah. And just like with a lot of stories in real life, the abuser told the victim that if you say anything, people will get hurt. And the fact that like it's not even like if he's like some scrawny guy and he's like, I'm gonna hurt your family. To put it into perspective, the guy who was abusing Moss was Redemption's coach for boxing. So it's like he's a tough guy.
He's
So
also
he
their
could
uncle.
hurt someone. Yeah.
He's also their uncle. Basically, he is Redemption's mother's sister's husband. So like an uncle basically. So, and someone that's really trusted that you wouldn't think twice about allowing into your home and being near your kids.
And he actually lived there, because remember, they all lived in the same house.
Yeah, they all lived in the same. I don't think they lived there, but they spent a lot of time there. They spent a lot of time together.
No, I'm pretty sure they lived there, because remember when they went to confront him, he came downstairs to the training room. Because I think it's kind of like a duplex type
to the house. Oh, maybe I got that mixed up. I thought they called him to come to the house.
They called him on the phone as to be like, come downstairs. I'm hurt. Some questions. What do you think surprised you the most in the book?
I didn't know it was going to be about sexual abuse near the end. I wasn't expecting that. I knew something was off because of the way Pat kept saying, there's a monster that's in your friend's home, and we need to figure out who it is. But I never linked it to specifically being about sexual assault, and I never thought it would have something to do with the youngest child in the house. I thought it was going to be anything that something was going on with Redemption, but not the youngest child.
Oh, I thought it was going to be like the parents. Like maybe like there was abuse, like domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse. I mean, it's always the person you least expect, that you don't normally look out for, right?
Are there any lingering questions that you still think about? I personally have a question that wasn't answered.
What were some of your questions?
My question was, okay, so Jam's parents said that this whole thing with the painting happened before. So I want to know what the situation was.
And they were very dodgy about explaining what had happened that first time, which makes me think that something happened where they might have killed someone.
Yeah, something.
But yeah, it's very mysterious what happened with them. But that could be like a prequel book in the making.
Maybe. Because it seemed to have happened when they must have been around Jam's age.
I have a question. So, city of Lucille, where this whole story is set, it's supposed to be like a postmodern, like angelic society where nothing really bad happens because they fixed all the sores of society before. And there were several mentions of the world prior to the revolution that happened, and they make connections to certain events that happened prior to. And one of the events that like they mentioned were like children being locked up in cages, monuments being torn down, which like it makes me think of stuff that's happening right now. So I'm thinking she's talking about like 2019, 2020, like certain things that are happening.
Lucille definitely is in the United States of America. Or the ununited states.
Ununited States. There might, by the time that this book is happening, it might not even be called the United States anymore. You never know. But one of the things that I liked that she mentioned was during the revolution, they tore down all the monuments to all the like pre-Civil War historical figures, and then they put up monuments to the children who died, to the people who died during the revolution. And I'm just like, you know what, maybe that's something that we need to do now. Update those monuments. We don't need a John A. McDonald monument in our lives right now. We could do with like a Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We could do it with a monument to like Chadwick Boseman. I wouldn't mind that. Or we don't need a monument to Ryerson Egerton. That can
That's what I'm saying. Man has a whole school which you attended named after him.
And I'm trying to say, like, she's trying to make it seem like that, like, the current state of affairs right now is the precursor to the revolution, that something big is going to happen that's going to change our current society. And I'm like, please.
I sure hope so.
I sure hope so too, please. I don't want to see any more anti-mask protests like the one that happened like yesterday.
Protests. All these people going into the Target with no mask. What do you think happened after the official ending of the book?
Good evening, Dusty. What do you think? What was your question, Anika?
What do you think happened after the official ending of the book?
I mean, I think, well, ideally, I think they did like a overhaul of their society and actually went back and like reviewed all, like, talked to all the kids, make sure that like nothing that happened to Moss is also happening to them. Also, I'm just like, you know, you should be talking to your kids regularly to making sure that like they're okay and that no one's hurting them, not just assuming, right?
Well, I mean, in this society that we're living in, yes, but in their society, they feel like that's like obsolete.
Yeah,
so they have no reason to ask.
And that's when you slip into like a dangerous situation too, by believing it's not happening.
So much more could have happened to Moss if they hadn't hunted.
I do want to say that I really like the fact that the author chose not to retell his specific trauma to the viewer. Like, she sort of just kept it private between Moss and the person that he chose to tell his story to, which was his older brother, Redemption. We don't get the exact details of what happened, but we know it's something big. And
we know it's sexual abuse.
Yeah, we know it's sexual abuse, but we don't get the details of everything that happened. And it's almost like she's trying to say it's enough that it's enough for you to know that it happened. You don't need the details.
Do you think that Pet still exists somewhere? Like, once Pet went back into the painting, do you think that that's just it, or do you think that Pet might like be hunting other monsters?
I mean, I'm sure he's still around, but just not in that form. Like, he seems like he's an omnipresent. Yes, omnipresent being. Like, he's everywhere and anywhere that he has to be. I have to say that throughout this book, I felt he was more a metaphor for Jam's conscience, like the voice in the back of her head saying that something's wrong. Why do you think she didn't send him back to the painting like her parents wanted her to?
Because she had a bond. She had like an unknown bond with Pet. It's like her parents just like could see it and just like say to like send it away, but she could feel its presence. She could feel its like its beat, its walking. She probably felt like she wasn't ready to give that up. It could also be because, as you said, she's an only child, so like that was a bond that she wasn't able to have, because obviously her parents have a bond. They're in their thing.
She kept mentioning in her house it was always Bitter and Aloe versus her. It was always the two of them and her. And since Pet came, it felt like it was her and Pet versus Aloe and Bitter. So she had like a friend, someone else to rely on, like a partner.
And what made it better for her was that Pet, like her and Pet could communicate without, because she, as we said, she doesn't really speak a lot. So she could communicate with Pet without having to sign, without having to speak. Just her thoughts alone, they would communicate.
I also think she didn't send him back because he was talking about redemption and that something was going on with him and his household. So I think that was enough to start like a seed of worry or doubt. Enough so that she wouldn't want to send him back without figuring out what is actually going on over there.
When she had her fight with Redemption, that nearly broke her, because they never fight. They never argue.
So how did you feel about the overall reading of the book? I thought it was pretty easy. It felt like I was reading like a fairy tale.
Yeah, definitely. Because what would be the age group for this, really? Would this be considered young adult?
I would almost say it's for like teenagers, like younger teenagers, like preteens.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed the book.
It was an easy read for sure, and it went by very fast.
First of all, shout out to Tumblr, and for me, always spending all my time on Tumblr, because that's how I found out about this book. And I just randomly went to pick it up when I went to pick up the book for our first book club. And then I casually mentioned to you that the author was part Tamil, and you were definitely
intrigued.
enough.
That was enough for me to read it. She's
so
part
the
Tamil,
author's
part Igbo.
Yeah, so she's half Nigerian, which she presents as that. She was raised in Nigeria.
I can see me in her face. I can see her in her face.
Well, like you looked her up, right? What kind of Tamil is she?
Malaysian Tamil.
They have Tamils in Malaysia?
Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Burma,
India, Sri Lanka.
India. I think they have some in Thailand too, but don't quote me on that. I gotta finish my research. Also, I found out that the language that that native Australians or indigenous Australians speak is actually very similar to Tamil as well.
So you can communicate with them, maybe?
No, I can't, but I'm saying it's similar.
What do you mean, no, you can't?
I can't.
You speak Tamil.
I do, but not every form of Tamil that is different from depending on which country you're from. So like everyone speaks with different.
So
different
you think that theirs is closer to which country?
I would say it's almost like a dialect. It's not like 100% Tamil, but it sounds so similar. Like they have certain words that are the same. And also, I'm just like,
there's a language in Indonesia that apparently it's the easiest language to learn. I forget what it's called.
Now is a good time to look it up. I like that we're looking up languages when we should be talking about this book.
You mean like last time we went off topic and talking about the Bible for a long time?
Yeah, Bible studies. I'm sorry for the people who stuck around for that one.
Okay, well this kind of like relates to
very big. This is very biblical though, I felt.
Oh, yeah. The whole angels, monsters, they went back to like looking about the angels in the Bible and like how they looked, how they're like how how angels always say fear not because they look creepy AF.
Yeah. They look like monsters themselves.
Isn't that the last words that Pet told her? Something
Don't
about
forget.
fear not?
Fear not. I thought he said don't forget.
Oh, I don't know. I was gonna say, as you're looking up the languages, this reminds me that obviously Jam communicates in ASL, and I've been trying to learn ASL lately.
I learned one.
The color of this is purple, and this is purple.
I learned how to say I'm sorry from this book. I learned that from this. So the ASL descriptions in this is pretty well done.
Do you feel that the setting of this impacted the story? I definitely think so.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I feel like it goes back to saying that like once people get to a state where they're comfortable, where they feel safe, they stop looking out for each other because they think that nothing bad can happen because we're all in a safe situation. Nothing bad can happen from this point.
You're included, Divi. You're Tamil people that immigrate here. But what do you mean by that? You mean it's because so many people speak Tamil, so like different like countries come here because they got that Tamil? Is that what you mean?
Divi, they immigrate there because it's hot and it's one boat ride away.
Oh, you mean Australia?
Yeah.
Do a lot of Tamils go to Australia?
Oh yeah, it's like pretty much like here, Canada. Like they have a huge immigration population of Tamil people.
I want to visit Australia one day. However, I'm not trying to die today.
What do you
But
mean?
Australia has all the deadly things. They're telling me that I'll just be sleeping in my bed and some huge spider or some huge poisonous something just comes for me. No, thank you.
I mean, that's the risk you have to take when you want to travel to a country that's in that part of the world. Like that's just the
Spend
stuff that
all that
you do.
time traveling and then I might not even make it back home because I dead.
That's the risk you gotta take.
Hmm.
And it's also they have the highest
We
rate of
know.
skin cancer in the world. They also get like yearly wildfires. There's a high rate of racism in Australia too.
Yep.
Um,
Especially to the
bugs,
indigenous.
bugs. If you don't like bugs, they have worse bugs than we do. It's like the same as Sri Lanka.
I'm surprised you went and came back fine from Sri Lanka.
Since I went and came back fine, I internalized my trauma.
Okay.
I told you I had an allergic reaction to mangoes there, and I almost died. Literally,
No mangoes for you.
no mangoes from Sri Lanka.
I
Back to
wonder what's in that. I wonder what's in that harmed you.
the pesticides. The pesticides that they use there are different, right? So
You
I
would think that they
probably
aren't using pesticides.
everywhere uses pesticides.
You need that organic, non-GMO.
I got a quotation here that I want you to explain to me how you feel about it.
What page is it on?
It's on page 149. And this is how it goes. We should have known. It's not that Lucille failed me. It's more like all of us might have failed Moss, you know? So
I
she's
feel like
trying to
we have different things. Oh,
possibly.
never mind. I see it.
Yeah. So Jam is pretty much trying to say that like the community failed Moss because they did not see what was going on right beneath their eyes.
Yeah, because yeah, they see Moss all the time. Like he like loves them, and the fact that they didn't recognize it, I would feel guilty myself.
Mm-hmm. And there's another theme where it's like it's a community. Like we're all supposed to be there for each other. We're all supposed to look out for each other, right? That's how we don't let these things happen to our kids.
And then it happened right under their noses.
And then it happened right under their noses. It's an idealized way of trying to build a society. Because, like I said, if you're not all looking out for each other, there's always going to be someone who slips through the cracks or someone who tries to take advantage of your trust and then completely abuse it.
Literally.
I was watching this episode of Madeline, the disappearance of Madeline McCain, and it's about a young girl who goes missing in the middle of the night from a
Is that like a docu-series?
it's a docu-series. So
Also, how is my book casting such a beautiful light?
I have no idea. But yeah, in the docuseries, this young girl goes missing in the middle of the night while her parents are on vacation with them and their kids in Portugal. So their parents had gone out for
I
the
know
night.
this story. Yeah.
Yeah, her parents had gone out for the night with a bunch of their other friends, and they had left their kids alone back at the apartment, and they were taking 30-minute intervals to go back to the apartment and check on their kids. And during one of those 30-minute intervals, someone had actually come to the apartment where Madeline was staying, rolled up the window, got into the room, and took Madeline and left. And it's been like 20 years, and no one has supposedly seen anything, except the night that the child went missing, there were 4 or 5 other people who reported seeing a man carrying a blonde child who looked to be around the age of 2 to 3, and she was wearing a light-colored pajama in the middle of the night, on like walking in the middle of the night, and no one said anything to the cops until like days and days later.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, you know that show that you and I used to watch? What Would You Do? Is that what it was?
Yeah, what would you do? I still watch it.
Yeah, it's like that. So it's like people see things, but they don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Because
feel like
it also goes back to that thing where, like, if you do say something, what if someone doesn't believe you? Like, that's what Jam says in the book too. Like, she feels that it's like if she tells Redemption that there's something going on in your house, that he might not believe her, or he would side with his parents and say that, like, oh, Jam's making up stuff. Like, it happens again near the end of the book where Redemption tries to tell his mom and dad, his moms and dad, that Moss is being abused, and they didn't believe him.
Yeah.
So, like, whenever you find out something, and there's always that fear that, like, even if you do come forward, what if someone doesn't believe you? Or what if someone lashes out against you for telling the truth?
You gotta take that chance.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way. It's like if you know that your good friend is dating someone and then you see that someone out with somebody else, what are you doing? Are you not gonna rat them out? Take pictures for proof and rat them out? Or confront them in?
It depends on the person and how close I am to them, because I don't want.
If you were to go out and you were to see Gregory with some next girl,
You're making me sweat.
Let me say some next girl.
Don't ask on here. Don't ask on here.
You're gonna tell me that you're not gonna, in the very least, take pictures and send me to be like, what's going on? Do you know about this? Or at least, in the very least, text me to ask, like, oh, like, something regarding Greg. Yeah, I'm sorry, Greg. You're being put on.
Uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable. I would either, you know what? I feel so uncomfortable. I would either, tell Greg, be like,
so you'd confront him in that moment.
Yeah, I would always give Greg a chance to redeem himself. And if he doesn't, I would take pictures and send it from an anonymous phone number.
Well, no, you have. Let me give you the like. The
I feel
tea.
nervous. My palms are sweating.
What you gotta do is you take the picture before you confront the person. Because if you confront the person first, then they're gonna like make it in a way that you're not gonna be able to get the picture. So you need to take the picture first and then confront. And if they decide not to, whatever.
Okay. Okay. I'll do that. God forbid.
It wouldn't happen with Greg. I just had to make a somewhat realistic example.
Out of all the people in the world who do that, like, you know what I tell you Greg is. He's like a cinnamon roll, so he doesn't do stuff like that.
Personification of a cinnamon roll.
Personification of a cinnamon roll. Like the nice ones that you get from Cinnabon. Like, he's that. Yeah, that come in the blue box. He's that. Oh,
Hear
that
that,
was
Greg?
a
You're a
nerve-wracking
blue box.
conversation.
She
Next
she
topic.
didn't pop a Molly, but she's sweating. Woo.
That's not. Yeah, we don't have those type of conversations in front of other people.
In front of 3 whole people.
And the other person is your boyfriend.
Even more reason. I have nothing to hide. This is a hypothetical question. This is more a test of you than him.
Read what Divvy is saying. It's true. Like a lot of times when kids speak out against their abuser, they get punished for it. Like they either get kicked out or they get alienated from the family. Like this happens a lot in South Asian communities too. There is, more often than not, there are a lot of cases of sexual abuse within the same family of like South Asian descent, because more often than not, the parents will take the side of the adult in the situation, meaning that they'll believe that the adult never did anything and that the kid is just making up a story for attention. Like it happens a lot, and the kid is the one who gets punished for it, in either getting alienated from the family, alienated from from his or her parents, or kicked out, as she said.
I mean, it's true. However, parents need to realize it's like if your child is like 3, 4, 5, even like 8 years old, and they're saying these things, it's like, don't you think you should believe them? Because where are they going to be getting this from? They're not just gonna make something up like that. What does a 4-year-old know about like somebody doing that if it didn't happen to them?
It's it's a question of them believing their kid, but it's also a question of them not wanting to
Believe.
not wanting to upheave their current life, basically. They don't want to believe that the family that they've chosen to be around their kid is capable of doing that, because then it also means it's their fault too, because they allowed that person to be around their kid, and they don't want to recognize their failures as a parent.
I saw this video on Instagram today. It was this girl, she's in her teens, and she's in the bathroom and she's crying because what she had said was that she confronted her mom about her mom's boyfriends always like touching her and like sexually assaulting her, molesting her, like even like raping her as a child. And her mom beat her up, saying that you're lying, that didn't happen, when like the mom knew that it happened.
I mean, another example is like Jeannie Mai, from The Real. She did a whole video about her sexual abuse at the hands of an uncle in their family who was also living with them at the time, and she had gone out to her mom and said like, this is happening, and her mom just straight up said, I don't believe you, you're lying. And she didn't talk to her mom for like 10 years after that. So like her relationship,
and now Mama Mai is like,
Mama Mai is
just like,
now their relationship is so good, but it's only after the fact that Mama Mai realized that someone that she had let into her house, who she had trusted to be around her kids, harmed her daughter. And they still lost 10 years of their mother-daughter relationship.
I mean, it's more than that too. Like when these traumatic things happen to a child, especially in their like formative years or like during their development, it affects them and the rest of their development. It affects
them
their
for the rest
emotional
of their life.
development, their everything.
Like emotional, psychological, physical development.
They're not able to like to form proper bonds or like form relationships properly.
They act out in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
They act out in certain ways, and they also feel like they don't have control over certain situations, more so than people who haven't gone through sexual abuse.
That's why a lot of times people who suffer with that, they self-harm, because self-harming is something that they control.
Or they have issues with intimacy.
Yeah, you can like say like, okay, I have control over cutting myself and bleeding. Like if I cut deeper, it will bleed more.
Yeah, and we don't really encourage, like, our society right now doesn't really encourage people getting help for their trauma, if you know what I mean, like seeking out therapists. Like, I know that the conversation is there, but we still have that mentality where it's like, let's take care of it within the family. Don't let anyone know. Just deal with it yourself. Like, the hardest part of the trauma is like
Hit me
letting
up in
people
18
know.
months when I'll be your addictions and mental health counselor. I'll help you with your traumas. I'll help you work through it. For $50 an hour.
I mean, it's very important that you finish that too, because it's a very needed occupation.
Definitely. Especially because I'm specializing in Indigenous. So obviously our Indigenous communities really need it. Because the government over years and generations have just like put them under.
Mm-hmm. Systemically put them under. They've been really overlooked for the past couple decades, and now it's gotten to a level where it's just like suicide rates are so high in Indigenous communities within Ontario alone. Forget Canada. Within Ontario alone, like they had a few years ago, there was a
Ontario as a general has the most population of Indigenous people.
There was like a province-wide alert that was issued a few years ago. Like all the Indigenous reserves were shut down for a while because of the high suicide rates among teenagers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was like at least 2010 or 11. Like, it's been a few years, but like the rate of people who were killing themselves was so high that they actually had to shut down the reserves and like send mental health counselors to go and try and fix the situation.
Also, before I forget, let me plug this in there. On, is it Wednesday? On Wednesday, wear an orange shirt because it's Orange Shirt Day to bring awareness to residential school survivors.
That's a good call out.
Oh crap, I just dropped my water.
I think I read somewhere that the last residential school in Canada closed in 1996.
97, I think it was.
97. So it hasn't been that long that they were completely shut down.
A lot of abuse and stuff happened in those places.
Yeah, I read somewhere that when the South African government was researching ways to strengthen apartheid in their country, one of the countries that they actually studied and helped incorporate some of the laws into apartheid was Canada. They studied specifically the residential school system.
Which, okay, because for one of my Indigenous classes this past week, I had to, it's a small assignment setting up for a big assignment. So I had to watch a whole bunch of videos of these residential school survivors and I had to pick one. So from watching all of them, it's like these people went through so much, and a lot of the times their own parents went to residential schools and like they didn't know any better, so they sent their kids to residential schools because sometimes the government came and like took
them.
the children by force
to take choice.
And when you get there, like everybody's hair is cut, so they all look alike. What I was surprised of learning was that just like with the Jewish people during the Holocaust, they're just given a number. They didn't even give them like a so-called Christian name or like anything.
They gave them
like you're
numbers.
Just known by a number.
No, they gave them numbers. I think I have a book about that called "My Name Was 003," and it was about a residential school survivor in Canada. I gotta look that up and send that to you.
It's a novel, a children's book? What?
It's a nonfiction biography. It's a biography.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
And like some residential schools are better than others. This guy went to one, and then he ended up burning down somebody's barn, so he got transferred. And the one he transferred to was so much better than the first one. And then he found out later upon research that the first one he was at was actually one of the worst residential schools.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of kids passed away in the residential schools just from like negligent things like fires happening in the dorms or malnutrition or kids getting sick and not getting the proper care needed. There were also a couple kids who tried to run away, and them not knowing the landscape, they weren't able to get home and they disappeared.
I think so. One of the theaters at Trent was named Wenjack Theater, which is like I had a lot of classes there, and it was actually named after Charlie Wenjack, which apparently he was a residential school runaway, I think it was.
Yeah, there's a book about him. There's a children's book about him.
So like that was kind of cool. It's just funny to think that I went to a school that had such a rich indigenous like presence and program too, and I never like got the opportunity to take those things, and then now I'm basically doing indigenous studies with my program.
I mean, it's better to come to it late than never at all.
I guess so. Because like we had teepees and everything there.
I mean, I feel like our schools don't really do a great job of educating people on indigenous cultures or rights. It's sort of just like, oh, Columbus came to North America and there were Indians and they died, and the end, period. There's not that much education that's gone into like properly telling people like what does it mean to be indigenous today? What are their current political issues, societal issues? Like there's not that much education, and partly most of it is because like our schools just don't bother to educate people.
That's why social media is good, because people are learning a lot of things they didn't know.
Yeah, but I also feel like you need to have it in the schools, basically, because on social media, people only follow the accounts that they have interest in, which is fine. But if it's in the school, then everyone has no choice but to learn.
I mean, it's true. This, like, especially when we're learning history, teach it there. When we're doing
social studies, teach it there. Teach it in history.
Social studies. When you're doing history, social studies, civics, all those things.
The one thing that like the Canadian public school system can work on is teaching the history of people of color as it pertains to Canada.
Yeah, definitely.
So teach about like the contributions that people of color have made to the development of Canadian infrastructure, building, society, culture.
You and I never learned about Viola Desmond in school.
No. Well, I learned about her in a Canadian Heritage Moment.
No, but I mean like in school.
No, never in school. Like you'd have to look that up on your own, and you would also have to know where to look in order to find information about her.
Like at least now she's on one of the new $10 bills, so that kind of like gives more representation. But
yeah, but every time I hear that, it goes back to that like hip hop saying like $10 hoe. It just doesn't fit right with me for some reason.
So you don't have the $10 then? I still have not come across it.
I do. It just doesn't fit right with me for some reason. Having her face on that bill. Like, why not the
Would you
$100
rather be on a
note?
loony?
I mean, I use loonies. It's just that
She's only worth $1.
it's that phrase, like $10 hoe, that's like used in hip hop music a lot. It's like it's a personal thing. But yeah, there's a lot of people that we don't learn about. Like one of the schools that I went to, Mary Shad Public School. So I went to this school and I had no idea who Mary Shad was until I had looked her up as an adult, and she was one of the first black female journalists in Canada. She was the first not even first black female. She was the first female uh first female publisher of a newspaper within Canada. I had to look
You
that up
see?
on my own. And
But that's
it was
another thing. It's like most of the public schools are named after people. They need to teach you who goes to the school the history.
or at least like have a plaque or something to commemorate the person that's being named. There are a lot of schools and there are a lot of like different parks and squares within the city of Toronto itself that like are named after
Have names.
people of color that you don't know. You don't know.
Or just named after people in general, and you're like, who that?
Yeah, who use that? A bunch of links on the other side. Yeah, so she was the first Black woman publisher in North America and the first woman publisher in Canada. She was also an anti-slavery activist, journalist, publisher, teacher, and lawyer.
She was all around.
She was all around.
She was a lawyer too.
A lawyer too. She was everything that she had to be in order to get by.
Is this Secret Path book Charlie? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the book about Charlie Wenjack. It's a children's book. It's illustrated. The first one that I sent you is the one that I was talking about it was the biography of a residential school survivor. My name was number 1.
Okay. They called me number 1. Called me number 1. And this last one's Mary Shad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't even remember how we got here from the book.
We were talking about miseducation, and we were talking about the part of the book where they were talking about everything that happened prior to the revolution, and we are currently living in everything that's happening in prior to the revolution.
Reminds me of the revolution will not be televised. This revolution will not be televised. Revolution doesn't happen between these thighs. I sent you that video before. Right?
Yeah, you did.
It's like a spoken word.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the revolution is going to happen within groups of like young people speaking out and fighting for their rights. It's in the hands of the young people now. You can't trust adults older people to
Not only that, but
commit
like
to
people
change.
need to band together. There's just too much separate. Like basically, okay, people like to say everything's black and white, black versus white, but it's like black people need to stand behind the indigenous people. The indigenous people stand behind black people. The like Asians stand like together. Like we all need to band together. Cause like, what's this saying? United we stand, divided we fall.
But we also have to recognize the issues that each of us go through differently.
Yeah.
And give respect to that.
We need true allyship.
Yeah, true allyship. And there's that state. What is that acronym? That black. Is it Black and Indigenous people of color or Black Indigenous people of
It's
color?
black, comma, indigenous,
Black.
comma, and
Yeah.
people of color.
So you also have to give space to issues that are currently at the forefront of society right now, like who's being affected most. Like right now, everything that's happening with Black Lives Matters and Indigenous people rights right now, like certain issues just have to get more attention right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like big example right now is the whole case with Breonna Taylor,
Breonna Taylor
and I
and
think
that whack ass judge.
and the judge who basically gave a slap on the back of the hand to the police officers who were involved in her shooting. And I'm
I
just
wouldn't
like,
even
how
call it a slap on the wrist. He essentially rewarded them with a lollipop.
pretty much. And how is it that the bail for the police officers is lower than the bail for someone who's protesting on the street about this whole killing? I think the bail for the protesters was like 100K or something, but the bail for the police officers was like 10K. It doesn't make sense. Oh, and I want
America.
to say, so
America. 3Ks.
I started watching Inside the NBA recently because all the talk shows that I watch are pretty much like off the air. They were off the air until like this week, basically. And so I started watching Inside the NBA for like the whole playoffs and whatnot. And then Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal said like the most ignorant thing about Breonna Taylor, and basically said like the cops were just trying to do their job. They were following orders, and if someone shoots at you, you're gonna shoot back at them, right? But I'm like,
She was sleeping.
she was sleeping, and the police officers also entered the house without letting anyone know that they were police officers. So the person on the other end is gonna think that there's a intruder in the house, and they shot out thinking that there was a intruder, and they have the right to do that because they like gun carrying state, I guess. Like he was illegal. It was her boyfriend who was like a legal gun owner, so he's within his right to do that. But then the police just like unleashed this barrage of guns, like barrage of shots into the air, and basically trying to hit anything and anyone.
And their actual charge was based off of the bullets that missed. They didn't get charged for the bullets that actually hit someone. They get charged for the ones that did not.
Missed. Yeah. And did they get what they were looking for? Did they get the person they were looking for? No. But they costed the state, all these people, time for a murder that should not have happened. And they also took away a paramedic in the time of a pandemic.
Like, how do these people sleep at night?
How do you justify your reasoning?
That's like, okay. You know how the train operators, how a lot of people commit suicide by jumping in front of the train, and like they have no choice, not no choice, but like they can't like not hit them. And like those operators, like they're affected, and like some of them even like have thoughts of suicide. And if that was not in their control, but these people, these cops who keep repeatedly doing this stuff, they don't have these same thoughts. They're just sleeping at night, all fine.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even gonna be like, you know what, I was wrong. I turned myself in. Pigs, I tell you, and not the cute ones.
I mean, a pig is a pig at the end of the day. Yeah, so he was within his right to shoot at someone he thought was like someone who was breaking into the
Intruder.
house.
Yeah.
And it's on the police for not letting them know that they were police officers. Like, I didn't even know, like, you could come into a house like that and not let your presence be known. Like usually when you see on TV, like police entering a house, they knock on the door and say police.
Yeah, TV is different.
TV is different.
I'm telling you, those same cops, they need Pet to come hunt them because they're the monsters.
Yeah. They're
And
called
them.
the old law. That's the old law.
And Pet would want to kill them, and somebody would just Jam would be like, no, you can't kill them. Just scare them.
There's a lot of magical realism in this book, with the fact that like Pet just comes out of nowhere, and everyone just sort of just accepts him.
Everyone?
Like
there's only 4 of them that see him. Them.
Aloe and Bitter saw him, and they didn't really question it. But I guess it's because of the
because it
experience
previously
they had before.
happened.
Yeah.
And remember, Redemption didn't just take it. Redemption was like mystified and wouldn't stop looking at it.
I mean, what can I say? The world is fucked up.
Language.
Sorry. I have an update for you. So we remember that case that we talked about in within our first meeting.
Devante.
It went to the Supreme Court of Canada, and the police officer, the brother who was a police officer who assaulted him, I think he's getting charged now. Devante Miller. I'm getting up the details for you right now. But if you want to tell our viewers some details about that case.
Okay. So Devante was a teenager at the time, and he and his friends were walking in a suburban area where this off-duty Toronto cop. Oh, they're walking in an area that's about like a 30-minute drive out of Toronto. So then this off-duty Toronto cop is at the cop's father's house, which apparently the cop's father also works within the Toronto Police Department. And Devante and his friends walk by, and then basically the question was asked, like, what are you doing here? Like, basically, like, you don't belong in this area. Hold on. Yeah, you don't belong in this area. Next, you know, they start chasing him with a pipe. His friends get away, but the cops start beating on this Devante with the pipe to the point where his flesh is all over these people's car, like this other person's car. His eyeball is hanging out of its socket. He managed to like knock on the door of somebody for help, and then I think the cops are like, oh, like they closed the door basically. Devante was able to call 911, and when he's on the phone, the cop was like, I'm a Toronto cop, like I've got this. And then they beat the snot out of him.
Yeah, they basically assaulted him with a metal rod, I think, to the extent that he lost an eye. He was very, very badly hurt. And yet when the local cops showed up on the scene, they didn't arrest the brothers for assaulting this kid. They arrested Devante, and Devante is like literally beat within an inch of his life. They still put handcuffs on him, and they wouldn't even like taking him to the hospital. They wouldn't even like take the handcuffs off for the nurse to treat him. And so this led to this led to a court case happening where unfortunately one of the brothers was a police officer. He was not given a proper sentence. Like they basically charged him with a lesser crime, basically. And Defante's lawyer was looking to charge him under a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. but this guy pretty much got like a pat on the back of his hand. And now the case has gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, and it's basically going in front of the judge again, so they can get the maximum charge for this guy.
This is for the cop's brother?
Yeah, it's for him. I don't think they've released a court decision on the other guy yet. But yeah, the decision on the retrial is going to come out November 5th at an Oshawa courthouse. I don't know why it should take that long, though. Like, the kid lost an eye.
He lost an
You shouldn't be
eye.
a police
He had,
officer
like, broken bones.
Broken bones. Like, you shouldn't be a police officer if you do stuff like that. It doesn't make sense. And the family was involved too. I remember the father also worked for the police unit that is in charge of reporting these type of crimes to the SIU, which investigates all assaults, all cases of crime that involve a police officer. Hi, Casey. That's my cousin. Yeah, so one of his father somehow delayed the reporting of the incident to the SIU, and yet they're all still working for the police. If anything, okay, if you don't get charged, you should still get fired, regardless.
That's the thing. Like, how do you become a cop here? Like, what?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Education
How do
did
you become a cop? A lot of, like, this is sad to say, but
police foundations in, like, what, 18 months in school?
Yeah, 18 months in school, and that's supposed to give you the training you need to deal with, like, someone who's going through a mental health crisis.
In order to become a cop, you must have a criminal justice bachelor's. That should be a mandatory.
Yeah.
Criminal justice, and then instead of going on to do your master's, then you do police foundations.
Yeah.
And then if you want, you can add on like a mental health or whatever, so that you specialize in mental health. So when there's a mental health problem, they send
take all the training, all the education that you need. I do have to say though that a lot of it has to do with nepotism.
Definitely.
Like it's who you know, and if you know someone who can get you a job within the police, within like a police unit anywhere, then you're pretty much good to go. You have the job.
That's how it is with a lot of different things. It's not what you know, but who you know.
Mm-hmm. Like I have a cousin who just finished police foundations at Durham College, and like he tried applying for like 1 or 2 years, and he wasn't getting anything, and he was applying to all the local regions like Mississauga, Toronto, Durham, and it wasn't anything. Like nothing was coming at him. So he's going back to school for criminology to like you know what I'm saying, like get his resume buffed up. But
yeah,
I'm just like, you would think that like as a minority that he would maybe have like an upper hand, because there's not that many minority police officers within Toronto too, even though we have like a huge community of Tamil people in Toronto. So you would think like it would be a good priority to hire people who are from the community to help look out for other people from the same community.
That's the thing. Like people don't think about these things. It's like I read the other day for one of my classes. It was a opinion piece from CBC, and it's saying that we need culturally appropriate health care for Black Canadians, because when you go into the system, like people aren't thriving because they're not having that representation. They don't feel comfortable, or their healthcare professionals aren't like taking their word for seriously. They're not aware of like the struggles they've had to go through, or all these things. So like it's necessary for that. So that goes for other aspects too. Like as you said, Scarborough, Toronto has a lot of Tamil people, so it would be an asset to have more Tamil cops, more like different, like black, brown, yellow, just not all white, because they're not aware of the struggles. They're not aware of like the different factors.
it's also good to have people who are part
They
of the
need like
policing
more
unit
resources.
who it's also good to have people who are also from the region or the area that they're policing, right? So they know the people, they know the issues at hand. Yeah, like honestly, like a bachelor's should be mandatory though. For the level of work that they do and the level of expertise that they need, a batch is necessary. I feel like college is not enough. But yeah.
Especially if you think about it, you graduate high school at 17, 18. The 2 years, you're going to be 19, 20. That's really young.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not even fully matured. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Multicultural because they just want to be able to have a picture to be like, oh, come to our country. We got many
It's
colored
multicultural
faces.
on the brochure, but once you get
Yeah.
there, it's completely opposite. It's
Yep.
like when we were applying for schools back in grade 12, every brochure had the picture of a brown face on the first page, and you go to
And
the
then you
campus,
go to the school
and
and
it's
it's
like,
just like,
oh, I'm the brown face.
yeah. It's true. Except for I find a lot of schools now have international students. So basically all their diversity is the international students.
Mm-hmm.
Who's just
Pretty
like,
much.
oh, you got money.
You got
You
money.
saying that my tuition is expensive, but your tuition is like 3 times that, and you're here, you got money.
A lot of international students go through a lot to pay for their tuition here, though. Like it's like life savings. Their families put a lot of pressure, like put a lot of their savings into this education. They're also working on the side.
But a lot of them also just have rich parents
That
who
too,
can
but I don't
who
want to
can
paint
buy
every.
them who can buy them downtown condominium and all the types of things.
That is not always the case for everyone, though.
No, not for everyone, but I'm just saying
Yeah,
a lot of them.
yeah, yeah.
Especially
Here and there, you
especially
get it.
especially the ones who go to school like in Toronto or like so like the ones that go to U of T, York. I wouldn't really say Ryerson much.
They're there at Ryerson.
No,
They're
but I mean like I'm thinking about like the Richies. I feel like they're mostly U of T and York.
U of T, York, and if we're talking about Canada as a whole, like UBC has a lot of
Oh yeah,
international students, and
definitely.
I
But
think
British Columbia has a lot of like Asians in general.
like there's a lot of Asian representation in Vancouver for sure. Another one is like McGill. McGill is like a
Mhm.
well-known school for international students too. And then yeah, U of T and York for some reason.
I don't know why. I mean, Divi, I know that's your alma mater and everything, but I would not be able to go to school there where they having strike every year. Strikes, strikes, strikes. Wasting my money.
It's not even the strike itself; it's the level of just weird things that happen at York. The level of assaults. The guy who
I
threw
know. I
coke.
remember in our first year, there was some big like thing about how there was all this assaults going like on in their dormitories.
Divya, I don't know, Divya, I don't know if you heard about this case, but there was a young girl who I think she was walking back from class late at night from York, and she was heavily assaulted by some random guy on the street. Like he came up behind her, stabbed her, assaulted her, and she was an international student, so she had to be put in like emergency care. Her parents had to fly over from India to take care of her. The issue with her was though, because she was an international student and she hadn't attended classes in a long time because of her health issues. Um, her health insurance with the school was going to expire by a certain date. And then after that, like she was going to be in Canada in the hospital with no insurance. And her parents would have to foot the bill for everything, and her bills were astronomically high because of the level of damage that had happened to her. And I don't remember what happened with her case afterwards. Like, I think she's still in the hospital, but I don't know if York did anything after that to sort of improve the safety for female students within their campus. Like, I feel like this happens all the time in that one particular school.
I know people always talk about in daylight, it's fine. But once the sun starts to set, that's when things get shady.
Yeah. Like, I know with York, they invested in a bus program where girls can hop on the bus to take them to, like, their car safely. Like a little bus, like it acts like as a courier service. Yeah. Or not even just like assaults. Well, this is technically an assault, but the guy who threw poop in a bucket on a girl studying in the library.
Yes, I forget, Dippy. You are a few years younger than us.
Yeah, like it was really sad what happened to her, but like she's basically here without insurance now, and her parents are relying on like a Kickstarter to help with the bills, but it's gonna be up to like more than $1 million for the level of care that she needs, because she can't fly home right now.
How long ago was this?
I think it was like a couple months ago, but don't quote me on that. Like, I have to check.
Oh, but like it happened recent. I'm here thinking like it's been over a year and she's still in the hospital.
It could be too. I think I might be getting my dates wrong. Female assault. I just read the wrong thing. It said it said one of York University's instructors was arrested for assaulting 2 students. That's a different story. So it happened in January, but I don't see any updates since then. Name. I think they mentioned her name on Instagram, but they're not mentioning it in the news right now. Yeah, sad.
I'm like,
All right, Anika,
I feel like
do you have any
we're
closing
being
comments on pets? We're really desensitized.
I feel like we're becoming desensitized because all these things, especially with social media, and we're being exposed to like all these different things, and people are just like viewing it to the point where they're not thinking anything of it anymore. Like all these assaults, like all these people being killed by the police, and it's like it's just another name. It's just another name.
Yeah, we get used to it after a while. Once you get used to seeing a certain level of violence, you just get used to seeing it.
And that's so problematic because that affects your mental health as well. Because you might think that you're not processing it, but you're holding it within.
Well, that's why mental health is important, right? And investing in mental health is even more important.
Which it's important that people get funding, because obviously if you're paying out of pocket, people can't afford these mental health things.
Anika, do you have any closing comments on pet?
No, not really.
Well, I have to say this book was really fun to read. It was completely opposite as to what I was expecting, based off me just seeing the title and not reading the actual synopsis for the book. I
That's
just
the
thought
thing.
that,
I didn't really read it. I just saw the cover and I saw that it was by a Tamil Igbo artist,
yeah,
sorry, author. So I picked it up because I'm like,
I was
try
sold on
it.
it based off the description you gave off the author, but then I read the title of the book and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a young girl who goes on an adventure with a little animal and it's gonna be cute and she's gonna be calling that her pet. It's gonna be awesome. And then I read the book and I'm like, oh, this is actually very serious. Like the topic
It's
is,
like it's heavy, but not like too heavy.
I mean, I feel like it is pretty heavy if you think about it.
But I mean, it's not. The book's not heavy in a sense where like you're reading it and you're like, this is too much. I have to put it down.
No, and it's not like, I want to say one thing. It's not graphic. There's not, like, even though it's about like sexual abuse, there's no description of the abuse. We just know that it happened. Right? So I felt
Yeah.
that like it helped the narrative of the book. I felt like like if I were to read about a sexual assault against a young child, I would have probably cried. It would have messed my mentality up. So having that left out and just knowing it happened was enough, and I feel like it fit with the whole narrative of the book. Want to tell our readers what we're going to be reading next week?
Our next thing is Genius, which is a comic book.
It's going to be a comic book.
I have it on this because Gregory actually has my physical copies right now. So hopefully he can read it by then.
I feel like that was
Is
shady.
Sean still in the chat? Sean will be joining us for the next one.
Yep. And Gregory's going to be
Well,
joining too.
maybe.
Yes.
If he
Yes.
finishes it.
It's Gregory. It's like 5 issues with pictures.
I think he's read number 1 already.
I have faith in you, Greg, wherever you are.
Sean, are you still there? I have a question.
We should get Divvy in on one of these. Like have her be
Yeah,
an
Divvy.
actual head.
Yeah, like Divvy, you tell me what book of our things you like. Or we have to choose new books soon because we're getting towards the end of our selection. So help us.
Yeah. If you like, yeah, look at your school schedule and then also look at the book choices too, and then let us know which one
Okay, Sean
you
is
want
there.
to do.
I have a question for you, Sean. Seeing as originally it was supposed to be the 11th that we do it, but 1, I have a baby shower that day, and 2, that's Thanksgiving weekend. My
Thank you,
question to you
Dusty.
is,
Thanks for tuning in.
would the Saturday work, which is the 10th? Would October 10th evening work? Let me know. Oh, Greg's read 1 and 2.
Good job, Greg.
Also, I read this years ago, and then only after I realized that I love myself some art by Afua Richardson, and she's the artist of this. Okay, so the next one will be October 10th. Same time, 7 work.
Same time.
Shanto?
Yeah,
I
that
think
works.
if I remember, Greg's schedule for that day is he's working till 6:30, so he's like 3 minutes away from work. So
What time would that be in Sean's time though? Because if he's in a
it's the
different.
same time. He lives in Florida.
Okay. I did not realize Florida had the same time zone.
Well, I mean, they do, unless it's not daylight savings yet. So even if it does change, that time hasn't come yet.
Okay. So October 10th, 7 p.m. everyone.
Genius. Do you have Genius on you? Show it to us. It's too far, isn't it?
Give me 5 minutes to find it.
5 minutes. Okay.
It's in the
So,
stack.
yeah. I'm going to have to reread this to freshen up. I'm still trying to get my hands on Cartel. Genius Cartel. I only have the first issue. I might have to order it online.
It was at the top. Y'all see it?
Yeah. Yeah. Look at you. You got it down. You're a true comic book person now with the flipping. Okay.
And they're all together. It's organized.
Oh no, that's scary. Not you, Sharanja. Read this.
That's scary.
Right?
I feel nervous.
I will, but it's scary.
Oh, Anika, let me show you another comic that I started reading.
Okay.
As soon as I
I'm
find
so behind on my comics because of school and reading
as you
reading
should
novels
be,
because of.
as you should
I mean,
be, because school takes the
I'm
priority.
reading this one for pleasure right now, and I'm really liking it.
I think that one's supposed to be a good book.
It's a great book. It's nonfiction, but it reads like a novel.
It's a bio?
Yeah, basically.
Unorganized.
And I'm reading Dread Nation as well. That's a long book.
Dread Nation is YA, right?
I don't even know. Probably, but it's long.
The Beauty. You see
I've
it?
never heard of that one.
It's another one from Image. It's like it's a mystery. It's about a virus that's killing people, and one of the symptoms is right before you die, it turns you into someone very, very beautiful. Bye, Ivy. Thank you for joining.
Finish your homework and finish mine too, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Finish your homework, future teacher.
Yeah.
Future educator in the works.
Okay, yeah, what did you say? It's a
mystery. It's about a virus that is killing people indiscriminately, and one of the symptoms is the fact that it turns you into someone very, very beautiful prior to your death.
So basically before you die, you're just like a goddess.
Pretty much. It's really good.
I mean,
And
I would die to look like Storm.
That's essentially the symptom. The main character who gets infected is a detective, and he also gets infected with the virus, so it's like a countdown. He has to figure out what's causing it and a cure before he gets killed himself. I love my Image comics.
Oh no. Ah! That's scary. Afua, if I'm around, I'll check out your stream. Okay, I have a story though. I have a story. Greg and I actually met her at New York Comic Con because I had my stack of I had my stack of Marvel comics that I wanted her to sign. But we getting there, and the people in front of us are talking to her for like it felt like an hour. They're standing up having a big long conversation, and we're just standing there like awkwardly behind them, like waiting. But she was so sweet when we finally met her. And apparently, my friend who'd actually just moved out of New York to Denver, apparently she used to party with her. I'm like,
no way.
Okay. New York's a big place, but small world.
That's so cool. That's why you gotta move to New York and actually meet people, meet creators.
Me move to New York? New York doesn't have anything for me. All the people that I know from New York are not living in New York. She moved to Denver. She's telling me, yeah, when you're allowed to come into the States, come visit me.
Colorado's beautiful though.
I want to go, but It's a 22-hour drive.
No driving.
And it's
No
a
driving.
3, almost 4-hour flight.
When you said
Which makes
22-hour you not no driving.
It
You
makes
gotta
no
fly
sense
there.
that it's such a far flight.
I mean, it's like pretty far. I mean, it's worth it though. It's beautiful. It's like all mountains and whatnot, but you go when you go, when the borders open back up and it's safe to travel. I think we should let our viewers go.
Because of COVID, it's cheap to fly there now.
Yeah, because it's literally you risking death.
No, risking death to be going to Florida.
Risking death would be going to. Oh yeah, Florida is definitely.
So sorry to Sean, who's risking death every day that he's living down there.
If we were living in the Buffy the Vampire universe, Florida would be the hellmouth right now.
Anyways, I guess we shall call it tonight. It's 1:45.
Yes, we should let our people go.
Work tomorrow at 9:30. Cue the Meg Thee Stallion song.
All right, thanks guys for tuning in. Anika, don't log off right away. I have
catch us October 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern, where it'll be us two and Sean and possibly Baby G. So yeah, catch y'all later. Catch y'all on the flip side. We out.
We out. Have a good night, everyone.